lovers. Welcome to the 56th episode of our podcast. We are hosting the podcast from the Read on Rent store in Jabalpur. You can buy books from the store, or you can even rent books for as less as rupees 5 per day. Tonight, we are going to be speaking with one of the most celebrated authors of our time. Please join me in welcoming none other than Chitra Banerjee. Chitra Banerjee ma'am is a literary powerhouse whose work. Hello, ma'am. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Happy
It
to
is
be.
truly an honor to have you here with us, ma'am.
My pleasure, absolutely. Thank you for all the good work that all of you do.
Thank you so much, ma'am. As I was saying, ma'am is a literary powerhouse, and her work has captivated a lot of readers across the globe. Tonight, we'll be discussing her book, The Palace of Illusions, which is a brilliant retelling of the Mahabharat from Draupadi's perspective. The book, in my opinion, it stands out as a beacon of feminist literature and has completely changed the way we view one of the most iconic women in Indian mythology. So, for those of you who know Chitra ma'am, you know all about her journey. For those of you who are not aware, let me please just tell you a little about Divakaruni ma'am. Ma'am is an Indian-born American author and a poet. She began her journey her career in writing as a poet, and The Black Candle and Leaving Cuba City are one of her earliest works. Following that, ma'am has written many best-selling novels, including The Palace of Illusion, Forest of Enchantments, Sister of My Heart, Independence, Arranged Marriage, The Conch Bearer, and many more. Ma'am is also a professor of creative writing program at the University of Houston in Texas. Apart from that, ma'am has won many awards, a few among them including the American Book Award in 1996 for her short stories book Arranged Marriage. She has also won the Josephine Miles Award for the same book and the Pushcart Prize Award for another book that is Leaving Yuba City. Another interesting thing is that a lot of Ma'am's books have been adapted into movies and plays. One of the most popular ones being Mistress of Spices, which came out in 2005 and is still popular. Another book that was adapted into a play was Sister of My Heart, and very excitingly, this book, Palace of Illusions, as we are aware, is also going to be adapted into a movie very soon. So, congratulations on that as well, ma'am.
Thank you.
So coming to the book, The Palace of Illusions, for those of you who have not read it, you must definitely pick this book up. I'll just give the viewers a brief description so that they can engage very well in this conversation. The Palace of Illusions, like I said, is a retelling of the Mahabharata from Draupadi's perspective. Ma'am has given her a voice, and in the book, she is not just a witness to the ambitions of men around her, but she herself is a storyteller. She is fierce, she's powerful, she's flawed, and unapologetically human. One brilliant thing about the book is that the prose is so cinematic that you can actually feel the anguish of Draupadi. You can feel her longing for freedom, her frustration at the injustices happening to her at the hands of the men around her. Although this is a retelling of the Mahabharata and has all the details encompassed in it, but what has been beautifully explored is Draupadi's birth from fire, her very beautiful bond and love for Krishna, her complicated relationship with all the five husbands, and my most favorite part, her quiet yearning for Karna. So now that we know about, all of us know about the book a little, I would like to start this conversation with ma'am. And I would like to ask you, ma'am, the first thing that popped into my mind when I read The Palace of Illusions, was that this book came out in 2008. And now it is 2025. It's been 16 years, and the book still remains vastly popular, which is commendable, ma'am. So, why do you think that, it's still so popular, and what do you feel about it?
First of all, I have to say thank you for that great introduction. Thank you for having me on your show. And
Thank
about
you.
Palace of Illusions, it's a big surprise to me when I wrote Palace of Illusions. At that time, writing about epics or mythology wasn't even popular in India.
Right.
that whole movement started sometime after Palace came out.
Very
So I
true.
had no idea people would like it. I had no idea if people would even want to read it. But I was very motivated to tell the story because from the time I was a girl, my grandfather used to tell me the stories of both the epics. But as with regular traditional tellings of these epics, he would be focused on, the five Pandavas. He would be
Hmm.
focused on Bhima and even the Kauravas, even the fights, the astras, all of
Right.
that. And Panchali was there, Draupadi was there, but he never talked about what she might be feeling. And this was
Right.
even when I uh, uh, grew older and read the Mahabharata, this was the basic traditional take. The
Hmm.
focus is always on the. But there are so many wonderful women in the Mahabharata who are big
Right.
players also in what happens.
Hmm.
And we never hear their voice, we never hear their stories from their eyes, we never
Correct.
hear what they are feeling, loving, hating. We just don't know. So I said, I need to write that
Yes.
story. And I'm very close to the original Mahabharats. Now, there are many
Absolutely.
Mahabharats in the north, in the south. It, as with all our epics, there are many retellings down the ages.
Yes.
But I want to do all the things you said. My Panchali, my Draupadi, was going to be a flawed character because
Hmm.
all human beings are like that. We are
Yes.
complex, we are flawed. And
Exactly.
I did not agree with this. I don't know, this project of making whitewashing women. If
Hmm.
they're heroes, they have perfectly good. If they're villains, they have to be completely bad. I wanted to show her as a human being. I wanted to give her her own voice. I wanted to make her funny in places, which I hope I've done.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and the relationship with Krishna was very, very important to me.
Hmm.
That part just kind of wrote itself. Yeah, I think I'm just so thankful that the book came to me.
We are thankful, ma'am, that we could all read it because, like you said, that after so many years it has been popular. So, and with the fact that we're still talking about it, like all of us are recommending it, and it, just goes to show that it is truly a classic book.
I'm very thankful for that. That's all I can say.
So, like you said, ma'am, that you wanted Draupadi to be, to come across as someone who's flawed and basically very human. So, were you conflicted, or how did you decide that this very different from the traditional interpretations that we have, read or heard about? So, was there ever a conflict that you had to, fight that whether you want to, show her as someone flawed or should you show her as someone very vulnerable and how she's being portrayed always?
No, I think from the beginning, I wanted to give the reader her inner voice, where she
Hmm.
is questioning herself as she's growing up. Right from the beginning of the book,
Hmm.
she feels, her brother, although she loves her brother very much, but she
Yes.
feels brother is the important one,
Hmm.
as in many that the father is completely focused on the brother. The father is looking at the brother for redemption,
Hmm.
just pushed aside.
Correct.
So I wanted to show those feelings
Right.
and how would she, being alone so much as she's growing up, she becomes very introspective. She thinks a lot about things.
Yes.
She's also few dark-skinned heroines,
Hmm.
and I really want to point to that, how she has to
Hmm.
learn that dark
Hmm.
is also beautiful, and that's a
Hmm.
theme that continues in all over the world, probably, but
Yeah.
certainly in India too.
Absolutely.
So those were all things that were in my mind right from the beginning, and that she's going to be outspoken, that she's
Hmm.
going to say things that I don't like. I always saw
Correct.
her as that character, and that the part where she says whatever she wants,
Hmm.
she's not afraid to speak up, in the Mahabharata as well.
I think that all of the things that you described make Panchali so relatable to everyone, like not just the readers or the people who lived in that era, but also now. All these things make her relatable even now as a female character.
I'm happy to hear that. I do think that, our epics are timeless, but they have to be looked at from today's
Yeah.
angle. And I think especially we looked at from the woman's viewpoint, because
Yeah,
that's so important, right?
absolutely.
Because we are up to respect and learn and be influenced by the epic. Therefore, we
Mm.
need to see the story. And
Mm.
you mentioned Forest of Enchantments and Sita over there, that
Yeah.
I have written,
Mm.
again, very closely related to the original Ramayans, and there are
Mm.
many. She's a very strong character.
Yeah.
And we often don't think of her like that. We think
Correct.
of her as very obedient, she's a good wife. But
Mm.
no, she was also a strong character,
Mm.
as is Panchali.
Yeah. So I think, ma'am, that you said that this is like what is needed to portray women in mythology in this manner. I think a lot of authors, have also taken inspiration and are portraying women of mythology and in history in a more feminist perspective. So how do you feel about that, ma'am? There have been a lot of, now, like you said, now it's the recent thing that people are taking inspiration and doing that. So how do you feel about that, ma'am?
I think it's wonderful. I think, it allows a dialogue. And what has
Hmm.
made me really, over the years, is that not only women are reading this book, which is, of course, what I want.
Yeah.
Women are, I see them as my very dear readers. But I'm
Hmm.
so happy to see that young men are also reading these books. They're reading it with the significant women in their lives. Sometimes it's their girlfriend or
Hmm.
wife, sometimes it's their mothers. And that
Hmm.
makes me very happy, because that creates a dialogue. And I think that's what
Absolutely.
book it is, for us to read the book, to take it in, and to create a dialogue with people. And that is how books will influence us. That is how books
Absolutely.
will change things in the world. And I really do believe, because in my life, books have changed my world.
Hmm.
And that is my hope, belief for all books. All good books can change people, can change the world. So every time someone writes to me and tells me, oh, reading about Panchali, I thought this, which I had never thought before, that makes me so happy.
Yeah. I absolutely agree, ma'am. There have been a lot of things that I have myself discovered while reading about Panchali from a lot of different angles because we've never seen her from the perspective that you have shown, and it is so beautiful. So along that, ma'am, there is like your book is definitely inspired from the Mahabharata, but how do you balance between staying true to the original text, but also taking that creative liberty and making it your own story and giving it your own interpretation.
So as I was telling you, I have read many versions of the
Hmm.
Mahabharata, and I picked from each one of them things that helped me really make Panchali a more complex person. So the big question people ask often is, what about these thoughts and feelings that she has about Karna? Now,
Yeah.
both Karna and Panchali, they are very honorable people,
Hmm.
and they will do what is right. So there's never going to be anything like an affair. That would
Hmm.
be horrifying for both of
Hmm.
them. But
Hmm.
this inner attraction is there in several Mahabharats
Hmm.
earlier, and it's
Hmm.
in Kashiram Das's Mahabharat, Bengali Mahabharat, which was one
Hmm.
of my sources. And if you really think about it, when Draupadi is going to have her Swayamvar, her
Hmm.
picking of husband,
Hmm.
she asks her brother, she asks her anyone who
Hmm.
will tell her,
Cool.
Krishna, who are the greatest heroes?
Hmm.
Because I want to be
Hmm.
the greatest hero of my time. And they say, well, it was Arjuna and the Pandavas,
Hmm.
but they have been, because if you remember, there was a plot, and the house in which they lived were burnt up. But
Yes.
she thinks, okay, they're gone. Then she says,
Hmm.
then who was left? Who was the
Hmm.
greatest warrior of the time? And they say, truthfully, it is Karna.
Correct.
So then her
Hmm.
set on Karna from the beginning. Right?
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
things happen. But that early thought, and when she sees him in the Swayamvar, and he is so noble, and he is
Hmm.
so mistreated because he doesn't have a lineage,
Hmm.
she feels, right? So all
Yeah.
of that is the Mahabharata, but we never see it from her point
Yeah.
of view.
Absolutely. Like you said, ma'am, this aspect of the Draupadi and Karna dynamic. this has been the most debatable and the most discussed aspect of your book that even I have come across. So, did you expect that, this part, the Draupadi Karna dynamic, will be, so discussed, the most discussed topic of your book?
No, I really, like I said, I was just writing my book. I didn't have any
Right.
expectation. I didn't even know if people would be interested in reading it because when I published it in the US first and then in India, um, people were like, no one is writing about the epics. They're gone. That's a thing of the past. Write about what's happening today in the
Yeah.
US. Write about what's India, right? The immigrant stories for which you've been winning awards.
Hmm.
And, Mistress Spices had been made into a movie. They were like, write more books like that. But this book was really deep in my heart. I had to write it. And once I wrote that, and then years later, I gathered up my courage and wrote Forest of Enchantments.
Hmm.
And I felt like, by divine grace, a big part of what my job was as an author
Hmm.
was done.
Right.
I felt it these books have created hopefully a conversation that will
Hmm.
go on for a long time and that maybe will change minds a little bit about
Yeah.
who is an admirable woman. She's
Hmm.
not the one shown as whitewashed, perfect,
Hmm.
always obedient.
Yes.
She's someone who thinks for herself and who has a strong back.
Absolutely. If there is one thing that your books have done, it is that, ma'am. They have actually changed the entire perspective of how mythological women are being, perceived now. So that is definitely very true.
Thank you.
Coming to the next character, ma'am, that we could speak about is that there's a very beautiful dynamic that is also going between Draupadi and Krishna. They have this friendship going on because he always calls her Saki, and she always feels that he is there with her in her time of need. So, how did you approach this dynamic between Krishna and Draupadi?
See, that was like my favorite part of the book to write, or at least one of my favorite parts,
Okay.
because they have such a sweet and playful bond.
Hmm.
And again, took the idea from the original Mahabharat. In fact,
Hmm.
for this one, I could go back to Vyasa's Mahabharat
Right.
and there, but it's just not fleshed out because the women characters are just not fleshed out.
Hmm.
So I wanted to flesh it out. I wanted to show that he is there right from the beginning and he is influencing her. And but she takes him kind of for granted. She
Yeah.
never thinks that although he is there in moments of trouble,
Yes.
he appears, helps her. It is
Hmm.
only when dying on the mountain that
Yes.
she realized. So, this book is also about our relationship not only with the
Hmm.
world but with the divine.
Yes.
You know, we all have a human relationship with the divine,
Hmm.
but I think it's especially important for women to have that relationship with the divine because it can strengthen us.
Yes.
Krishna is the one who her, why do you think your dark skin is not beautiful just because the other women are light skinned? You should
Yeah.
not think less of yourself, and that gives her the self confidence.
Hmm.
And I think I wanted to show is
Hmm.
that when we have that connection with the divine which is inside of us, it will strengthen and it will allow the best
Absolutely.
part of us out so that we can function fully
Absolutely.
in society. We can give something of value to society. So
Absolutely.
that is, yeah, for me, that was the sweetest thing. It just developed as the book went along, and I tried to make it like funny also because, Krishna, and this
Very
is true in
playful.
the
Yeah.
doesn't take things seriously
Yeah.
because he can see the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
He can see, and he helps her to see through that
Yes.
also.
She also says it many times that why can't you ever be serious? That
Yes,
so it's very, very beautifully said, ma'am, that actually Krishna, I think, in this book is not just a divine intervention, but he sort of makes her realize her own voice and lets her bring back her own confidence with her, I mean, by herself, which is very important in for all of us.
yes. And he is so human also, right?
Yeah,
I wanted to make
absolutely.
that's another beautiful part of our epics and mythologies is that the gods, the divine element, comes very close to us and
Yeah,
interacts and is our very intimate nearest and
mm,
dearest. He is he or she, however we see the feminine divine,
yeah,
is also some conversations with.
yes,
So I think all
absolutely.
that began to become a truth in my life as I was writing the book.
Yeah. So that you speak about writing, ma'am, in this book particularly, was there any part which was very challenging for you to write, which sort of, took a toll on you emotionally or otherwise?
Yeah, I think the whole book was difficult. All my books are challenging and difficult. I spend times with them. Sometimes, readers think that writers sit at the writing desk and everything just comes. Well, at least for me, that's not the case. I do a lot of writing, rewriting, note taking. In fact, you'll see I have a notebook right here on my writing desk.
Wow.
I'm about the book I'm writing right now and writing down my questions. But I think the part that was really difficult for me to write was the war and what happened during the war, all of the destruction, and how, although the war began as a war of righteousness and dharma
Mm,
yuddha, it
mm,
very soon fell violence and hatred. And
mm,
I really want to write that because the Mahabharata is probably the earliest epic that shows the devastation of war.
yeah.
And now, thousands of years later, we are as embroiled in
Mm,
wars across the world as at any time.
mm,
So, I really wanted to show that, and that was challenging. How to bring out the violence, how to bring out the loss of,
mm,
I don't know, heroes of the time, but also regular people. So that's why when the war ends and they go
mm,
back to Hastinapur, I
mm,
did want to show widows and how war devastates everybody, but women and children pay
mm.
the biggest price.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I described in the beginning, ma'am, although one of the most difficult aspects, like you wrote for writing, was the war, but even the war, although however futile or bad, it has been described so well in the book, ma'am, the way that you have described that the ground is red and there's spirits emanating and all of that. It has been written very beautifully, ma'am. So I wanted to ask you this question specifically about the way you write. I mean, it is very, I would say, poetic in a way. It is very immersive. So how do you get that from, your mind to the pen? It's a very different way of writing that you have. So
Yeah.
what is that process like, ma'am?
Well, the writing process is kind of mysterious for me, even after all these years. Like, can I really say where the ideas come from? Can I really say where the images come from? I can't. It is truly an inspiration that comes to all of us writers, I think, though I wouldn't comment on others' writing processes, but certainly to me it's very inspirational. I have to be in a quiet space. I have to be kind of not distracted by other things, and then images begin to come to me. So I'm a very visual writer, so images are very and, and before I was a writer, I was also a painter.
Wow.
And, at a certain realized I couldn't do both. So I chose writing because I felt, more deeply connected to that. But I still see in images. So that's why I think a lot of my is very visual because that's how scenes come to me, visual images.
That's some valuable piece of information right there, ma'am. So there are a lot of aspiring writers who look up to you, I'm sure. So can you give some, advice to them, especially for writers who are, into mythological fiction, who want to write mythological fiction? So could you give some advice for them as to how, they can go about writing that while staying true to the original story?
Sure, sure. And I think you just mentioned something that's really important. if we are going to write, we have to be very good with our research. So
Yes.
before I wrote Confusions, I did a lot of research, not only on every version of the Mahabharata that I knew about and I could get my hands on, but also the period. You know, what do we know at all about that period? What would people have been wearing? What would people have been eating? You know, what kind of astras did they have? What were some sort of customs of the time? So that I could really, uh, imbibe that whole time, that whole culture before I started writing. So I think those kinds of research points are very, very important for writers. Once you've done all the research, and especially you've read as many versions of the original story as you can get hold of, then you are ready to. My other thing would be my other hint, or maybe advice would be, you've got to give yourself enough time. A lot of time, we as writers, we're very excited and we want to rush to that project and we want to get that book out there to
Yeah.
readers. And I used to be like that too. I think with the years I've become a little more patient. But we have to give ourselves a lot of time to write. That we have the time to think about the words we are using, to create those word pictures that I talked about, and to revise. For me, revision is such an important part of the writing process. So I tell all my students here at the University of Houston, where I'm teaching creative writing, I tell, and I would tell everyone who is here today, that you have to give yourself time to revise. So, I try to carve out that time. Time is really one of the biggest things that can help us as writers. People think, oh, we have to have talent. Yes, but we have to be committed, and commitment means
Definitely.
we have time. I have seen over the years some very talented students who did not write anything significant after they left our program, after they graduated, because they didn't give themselves that kind of time and attention. And students who were not that promising, but who kept at it and who did do all of the things that I just talked about. And they have now come out with very wonderfully written and successful books. So a lot of it, not only what we write and what comes to us in the first draft, but what we do with that first draft before we send it out.
That's extremely valuable advice, ma'am. I think a lot of readers and aspiring writers will benefit a lot from that advice that you've given us. So, what was your research process like for Draupadi or Panchali specifically, ma'am? Like, what did it encompass?
Well, first of all, so I went back to all of the Mahabharats, and
Yeah.
because I don't know, this is just what I'm interested in. So I looked at all the kinds of clothes they were wearing because I wanted
Okay.
to get that in, all the jewelry they would be wearing, and all of that is in the book, especially for
Yeah.
Sita. It becomes very important because she's going to be throwing it when Ravan abducts her, and she is in the, in his pushpak, right, in his rath up there. She's going to be throwing. So I needed to know what kind of jewelry did people, and what kind of, when both, see the interesting correlation, both Panchali and Sita will at a certain time leave the forest, sorry, leave the kingdom, leave the city, and go into the forest. So, like, what would they wear before that? What would they wear after that? So I was very interested in what people might be eating at that point. So I went back to the earliest descriptions of food that I could find.
Wow.
And because Bhim is such a good cook as well as loves his food, there's lots of food descriptions. So
Wow.
things like that, lifestyle things.
Right.
Because lifestyle details is what brings a scene alive. And we can relate. What are the women wearing? What's the jewelry? What's
Yeah.
astras? That there's lots of descriptions of all of the weapons. So,
Yeah.
started making lists of them. And because of that, then I started making mental pictures again. And that was a part of my writing process. I also wrote down the most important scenes that I knew I wanted to focus on. So then I started getting like an outline.
Wow, that's amazing, ma'am. That's it's like getting a few authors' secrets right from one of the best authors right there.
Yes,
Thank you so much for the
and
advice, ma'am.
the other thing that I did is I wrote down what are the things about the traditional interpretations of Draupadi and Sita that I didn't agree with and why.
Right.
So,
Hmm.
you know, Sita is meek and mild. I don't
Hmm.
agree. Then I at scenes. So I said focus on these scenes that show her strength, right?
Hmm.
For instance, when she's left alone in the forest, she's heavily pregnant, she's left there for no fault of her own.
Yeah.
Lakshman leaves her and goes. How would she be feeling? How will she draw upon the strength inside of her to deal with this big challenge? So I looked at specifically those scenes in the Palace of Illusions. The most challenging scene that
Hmm.
was also very difficult for me to write is the Vastraharan, where
Yeah.
her clothes,
Yes.
Panchali's clothes, are going to be pulled off of her, and just the shame of that, just the just the horror, just really the violence against women that's shown in that scene.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to be a central scene, so I wrote a lot of notes about that scene.
Brilliant, ma'am. So you spoke about the strength of, yeah, that you've described about the Forest of Enchantments. What, according to you, do you feel is the strength and the weakness of our Panchali, ma'am?
Well, I think one of Panchali's, she has many, right? She's a
Yeah.
complex character.
Yeah.
One of her strengths is that she doesn't give up, right?
Hmm.
So, and we see that even in the scene where she's being disrobed, right? She's not going to just give up and become a victim and allow the Shasan to pull off her clothes. She's trying very hard not to show feeling to all of the elders in there. And when that doesn't work, she still doesn't give up. She appeals to Lord Krishna, who then helps her through it. And so she never gives up.
Yeah.
She's going to go to the forest with her husbands because she knows that she needs to keep them focused
Yeah.
on the idea of back their kingdom. She knows her husbands very well. She knows each one a characteristic. She knows that Yudhishthir is very like, okay, let's
Righteous.
forgive, let's have,
Yeah.
she righteous, but that kind of
Yeah.
peace-loving righteousness. She's like, no, remind him that righteousness would be go back and get
Damaging.
your.
Yeah.
So these are some of the things that I looked at for her. Also, Draupadi, we know it through the originals, but it's certainly in my book that she has a temper, and I wanted to
Yeah.
show that she isn't the kind who would be happy with the thought of other co-wives, and she's going to give them a hard time. So some of these human things
Yeah.
I thought about as I was writing her
Hmm.
character. Also,
Exactly. Very nicely said, ma'am.
you
She's
know, we know in the Mahabharata, unlike Sita, who is an absolute amazing mother,
yeah.
Draupadi is not very
Not so
maternal.
much. Yeah.
I wanted to point that out too, because that's kind of a burden put on
Hmm.
women. We must all
Yeah.
perfectly maternal. Wait, that's not everybody's
Exactly.
nature. Just,
Yeah.
we tell all men, you must be perfectly paternal. You
Hmm.
have lots of choices of how to be in the world. So I
Yeah.
wanted to share as well.
That's brilliant, ma'am. Although she does regret it towards the end, but that doesn't, really change anything about it because she doesn't regret any of the choices that she's ever made, including being not that good of a mother to her sons.
Yes, yes, yes. And later she will, after her children die, which is a very
Yeah,
sad point,
yeah,
think about it. And it's not like she doesn't love her
yeah,
children, but she's just not one of the hands-on moms who's
yeah,
always cooking for them and making sure they got the right clothes and wiping their
yeah.
faces. It's
Correct.
not that kind of.
Yeah. She has a lot of bigger things on her mind and on her hands.
Exactly, exactly.
So, what would you feel, ma'am, is that one thing that Draupadi would probably, advise to our modern women or to our readers? What is something that, Draupadi would say, or what would be a takeaway from Draupadi from your book?
Well, I think one of the things that I consider important in quote unquote, the message or conversation Draupadi would have with women today is what she says at the end of the disrobing, what she realizes at the end of the disrobing scene, because, in her mind, it says, though, excuse me, in her mind, she has this conversation with Krishna, and says, Krishna says that, you should not feel ashamed because it's not your fault that they're doing this to you. And she says, that's right. They and not I should be ashamed for this bad behavior towards me as a woman.
Yeah.
And I think, even now, and again, this is true all over the world. I see this in the US, I see this in India. Women are often made to feel ashamed.
Yeah.
There's a violence done, something bad done to them, something bad happens to them. It's not their fault.
Yeah.
But the people is looking for what she could have done differently to
Yeah. How
avoid,
can they blame her?
right? You didn't behave well. You didn't wear the right clothes.
Yeah.
You spoke up. Why did you make eye contact? Right? So I think one of the biggest lessons of Draupadi's life, and one of the big messages that, if I imagine her talking to women today, would be that don't allow people to shame you for things that you really didn't have control over. Don't allow victims. I think that's a big message.
Absolutely.
Book
Very.
of my own message, because I do a lot of activist work, as you might know,
Yes.
with especially in
For
situations
women.
of violence.
Yes.
That's so much that when violence of some kind, it could be psychological, it could be physical, has been done to us, we should not feel ashamed because we are now, I don't know, impure, or
Hmm.
because we didn't wear the right clothes. No.
Hmm.
If violence is done, we should be treated with respect and sympathy. We should ask for that
Yeah.
and not allow social voices to shame us.
Very beautifully said, ma'am. I think Draupadi still, even today, she still remains one of the most inspiring characters because she has shown us through her story that it's in your hands to change your own narrative and prove to the world what you can.
That's true. And although she doesn't succeed in everything,
Yeah.
she takes also in a very mature way. Okay,
Yes.
I did this, tried my best, results came out differently. All right, let's learn from it and move on. I think that's
Yeah.
also Draupadi's nature. Yes.
Absolutely.
And refuses to be excluded, right? Right from the
Yeah.
from the beginning
Beginning.
till the end, when they're going on the mountain on Mahaprasthan, everybody says, "You please stay home with
Don't go.
you
Yeah.
all of them, right? You
Yeah.
please stay home. Please
Yes.
stay in the palace." She's like, "No, I was always with my husbands and I will continue. And this last final spiritual journey, definitely I will undertake it."
Absolutely. A very inspiring thing done overall throughout her life.
I'm glad you think so. And I'm like beyond grateful that so many people for so many years, 15 plus years
Yeah.
after the book
Has
came
come.
out, are still
Yeah.
teaching it. So many colleges and universities are teaching it. That really makes me very
Yeah.
happy. So many students write to me all the time saying, "I'm doing my thesis on Draupadi. I'm doing my dissertation on
Yeah.
Draupadi." That,
Yeah.
as a at a university, that makes it.
Yeah. It's definitely true, ma'am. Like I said, your work has inspired a lot of people to even become writers, I'm sure, and not just do their PhD or pick up property as a character for their research, but has inspired, I'm sure, a lot of people to become authors as well.
And I'm so grateful. And really, I have to say this, I mean this 100%. I'm truly just grateful because, the book, I'm blessed that it came through me. I can't say that I am responsible for how it turned out. I'm really like a human typewriter, and the
Hmm.
words come, the inspiration comes, and I'm just very grateful.
Yeah. So a lot of readers, I'm sure, would like to know, ma'am, that what is next for you? What are you writing next, and when is your probable next book going to release?
I am working on my next book. I can't uh, tell the title or the topic
Of course.
because the publisher is going to make a big announcement. So all I
Okay.
can say is watch for it. Pretty soon there will be a big announcement about my
Wow.
next book. I'm very excited. If people look through my Instagram, I've been asking questions, so
Yes.
people might get the questions of what kind of book I'm writing. I've been asking questions about books, but also movies. Oh, I love movies. Movies inspire me so much as a writer, especially movies about like ancient times and
Yeah.
kind of movies of epic proportions.
Yes.
So I watch those and I think about them, and yeah, that people might get a hint from that. Even on Instagram, I've asked questions.
Yeah. Can't wait for the big announcement and to read what comes next for you. Speaking
Yeah.
about movies, ma'am, like we are all aware that Palace of Illusions is also going to be adapted into a movie. Can you share a little about that with all of
Well,
us?
it's been optioned, but
Hmm.
really, I don't know that much more. And
Okay.
people are moving it. I think what they're really looking for right now, well, they're looking for three different things. So if anyone's listening and who has any ideas or any ability to help with these things, please do, because I would also love to see this book become a great movie.
Movie. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, they, they are looking for a director, they're looking for someone to direct the movie, and of
Okay.
course, they're looking for funding. I think they know who Draupadi is going to be, but they
Oh.
haven't signed the
Oh.
contract, so they're telling me. So I'm not
Okay.
going to guess. But again, if you look at social media, you'll see that there are a couple of actresses who are
Speculation.
very
Yeah.
in this. So that's where it's at right now. It is a long process. And because it's an epic, they want to do a good job with it.
Right,
So
of
I
course.
think they need more funding.
And they must
So
do justice to the brilliant book that is written.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed and hopefully it will happen. It will happen sooner
Yeah.
rather than later.
Yeah. We hope so
And
too, ma'am.
after the conversation, I'll go back to them and say, hey, there's lots of interest. Why don't you push the
A
project, push it
lot of people
forward?
are waiting.
A lot of people are waiting.
Yeah. Great. So, ma'am, to conclude our session, what is the one piece of advice that you would like to give all of us who are your readers, who are, your fans of your books, or just, aspiring authors?
Well, I don't know if I have advice. I have a lot of gratitude for towards all my readers. I really mean this, and I want to say this to everyone today and to all my readers everywhere. Is thank you so much. Without you, I would not be a writer. What's a writer without readers? So thank you for reading. Thank you for thinking. Thank you for having conversations about my book. And thank you especially for recommending my book. So many people write reviews on my books, and that is very, very helpful. So, I do want to say that to everyone, please, not just for me, for all the books that you have loved from different authors, put up a review. And
Yeah.
now there are so many places where reviews can be put up.
Yes.
It really makes sense. So thank you all for being readers. I guess my advice would be, as a reader to readers, keep reading. Reading expands our world like almost nothing else. And it is
Absolutely.
so compared to like going halfway across the world to experience something. You read and you are transported there in a moment. And magically, not only the contemporary places, but you're magically transformed and taken into a past. You become part of that past world, that amazing, in this case, amazing, mythical, epic world. And
Yeah.
so please keep reading. Please encourage others to read. Those of you who have younger people in your lives, create that reading habit in them from right now. Because one of the things I'm so, so thankful to my mother and my grandfather is when we were growing up, I grew up in, a family that was not rich in many ways. And
Yes.
so I had not much in the way of clothes, etc., or toys, but I always had books. Every birthday, I would be given books.
Wow.
And that was, such a gift, such a precious gift. The books themselves and the habit it created. So that's what I would say to readers and to writers. You cannot become a good writer unless
Right.
you are a good reader first.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for all your valuable insights, ma'am. It has truly been an honor and a privilege. Your book and all your works are so popular. It's truly been a privilege to have you here with us.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
And thank you for inviting me. And thank you for all the great work you do to bring books to the attention of readers. I
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
that very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am.